and organic food has gone mainstream. Here's Rick Conger. He's the Director of Produce and Floral for King Cullen. A lot of organic food here.
Yeah, organics are continuing to grow. They're very, very popular with consumers. It's something that has yet to reach its height of popularity.
The percentage of produce that you sell, which is organic, what would be the percentage?
Probably somewhere around 5% of what we sell as a company.
Now, why did you get into this? I mean, here are health food stores, farmers markets focusing on organic. Not only are you selling organic food at your King Cullen stores, but also you have the Wild by Nature stores under King Cullen, which are purely, I mean, why the decision to jump into the organic market?
Well, organics have always been a small piece of the conventional supermarket, and it was something that was, you had to have it just to have it, and then after more and more publicity regarding organics being so good for you and good for the environment, that we've decided to expand them in all the stores.
Now, a stress by King Cullen too is to buy local.
Yes, we buy local as soon as it's available, probably late May through almost Thanksgiving, as long as weather permitting. There is the ability to grow the product. We buy it as often as we can get it.
Do you have enough coming out of Long Island, or do you have to go to the big organic operations in California, or both?
Well, on the local side, we have mostly conventional. We do get some organic, but not a lot. I mean, it's very hard to grow organic because of the no pesticides, and you have to really be very careful what you use. So it's very hard to get enough of a yield from the farmland to supply a company of this size. So whatever we get, it's minimal. We do what we can.
It's not just King Cullen that's gone into the merchandising of organic food. A company like Whole Food has become a national phenomenon stressing organic.
Right.
What is this in terms of food marketing? What does this mean, you think?
Well, it's what it's doing, what Whole Foods is doing, and what companies like we're doing, and Wild by Nature, is we're creating the market or enabling the consumer to get organics on a regular basis. And what that'll do is, the more demand there is, it'll translate into more farmers growing organically. There never was a lot of farmers that were growing organic produce because there wasn't enough of a market. Now the market's there, so all they have to do now is just continue to grow and grow more of it.
Now, you have organic produce, and how many King Cullen stores are there?
There are 46.
That's a lot. What about other supermarket chains? I mean, King Cullen is very much, it began on Long Island. It's been the supermarket on Long Island for food. It's not really national, King Cullen.
No.
What's the national picture in terms of organics being sold in supermarkets?
Well, if you believe, depending on who you talk to, statistically, organics are growing at double-digit growth every year, from year to year to year. Some of the claims are a little more outlandish than others, but it's at least in double-digit increases every year as far as what is being sold and what is being grown.
And like you mentioned before, people reading about organics being good for you and so forth. Is there more to it, you think?
Well, what it is, there's a lot of people who believe that it's better for the environment as well, because obviously with the environment, with all the pesticide use, contaminates groundwater, and some people, if they have diseases or if they're a little unhealthy, eating organically, it'll keep the amount of pesticides that they ingest to a minimum.
Now, we're here at the King Cullen store in Bridgehampton, New York.
Right.
You have the Wild by Nature, but 3 of them, huh?
Yes, there's 3 Wild by Natures currently, one in East Setauket, one in Huntington, and the other one is Hampton Bays.
Okay. Do you see an expansion of the Wild by Nature stores?
Yes, actually, there's another one planned for our first one in Nassau County. It's going to be in Oceanside. That's probably scheduled to open sometime next summer.
Now, my wife and I go to this King Cullen here in Bridgehampton. In fact, this organic section seems to be expanding.
Well, again, as I said before, the more there is consumer demand, the more farmers will grow products. You might not have had a consumer who bought organic or who grew organic squash maybe 5 or 10 years ago, but now, because there's a market for organics, he's growing organically. So the more growth there is with organics, the more you're going to see as far as availability and as far as space.
And as a professional in this field, it seems that you see a big future for organic produce.
I think so. Technology has helped these farmers to grow things better. They can get a better yield out of it now. They've learned certain ways to preserve it, whereas, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, it wasn't that easy to get it to market, but they've learned packaging and refrigeration and transportation advances that have allowed them to get organic product to the consumer and still have it look as good as it did the day they picked it.
Scott Chaskey is the preserve manager of the Quail Hill Farm of the Peconic Land Trust in Amagansett, New York. Scott, you've been doing this a long time. You've been in organic farming a long time. Can organic farming feed the nation? Can it feed the world?
Well, that's a big question, but I have always believed that yes, it can. It would take us a while to sort of take that apart and look at it in all directions, but organic farming has been feeding the world for centuries, if you look at it that way. It's only conventional farming is a new thing. It's only been with us since the early part of the 20th century, and we're right now trying to debunk some of the myths. And there are, if you think of the whole picture of organic farming in the world, there are many more organic farmers spread all over the world, running small farms that have been feeding people in local places for centuries.
Now, agribusiness claims that without the chemicals, without the synthetic fertilizers, without the chemical pesticides, you couldn't have the productivity.
Well, there are new studies that show that that simply isn't true, and in fact, it's just more difficult to find those studies. But if you actually actively are taking care of land, as I've been doing for many years, it's apparent that by feeding the soil using traditional methods such as composting and green manuring and rotation of crops and that sort of thing, you can get more or even better yields than you can. And in any case, sustainability is the real issue. Using chemicals over and over again depletes the soil health. And if you're interested in sustainability over a long term, you have to feed the soil. And that's the basis of organic or sustainable farming.
You're also the author of a book, Seasons on an Organic Farm.
Yeah. This Common Ground, it's called, which is really about this particular experiment, which is linking people in a very direct way to the soil. So that's through community-supported agriculture. So on this particular CSA farm, we have protected the farm. It's beautiful soil, beautiful farmland that the Peconic Land Trust has preserved, and then the Land Trust runs this community farm on this wonderful soil, and people come to the farm and harvest twice a week, and we've done this for 18 years. This is happening all over the country, actually.
Community-supported agriculture, CSA.
CSA is community-supported agriculture, that's right. And there are now about 1,500 CSAs all around the country. We were actually the first one in New York State, but it's happening all over the country in all different varieties, and basically what it does is link people to the farmland. It links people to the source of their food, and the people learn the face of the farmer and therefore the face of the food.
Scott, you have many titles. You're also the president of the Northeast Organic Farming Association. What is that?
Northeast Organic Farming Association is a grassroots organization started this is our 26th year. There is a NOFA in every state in the Northeast. The purpose is to link farmers and consumers to improve our the knowledge about sustainable farming, organic agriculture, and to create a system of food security system which is workable. And it was started by farmers, but there are links with all kinds of other organizations, environmental groups, consumers of all sorts. It's a organization that's been helping sustainable agriculture for a quarter century now.
Now, how did you, Scott, get into organic farming?
Oh boy. I went to England to get a degree in creative writing and wound up working in gardens. And I learned from some great gardeners in England. When I came back after 10 years of living in England and needed to have my hands in the soil, I was invited to a community-supported agriculture meeting by my father-in-law, who was one of the founders of this particular CSA, and here I am 18 years later.
You believe in organic on a personal level. You believe in organic farming, why?
Well, because I've seen the soul of it, the basis of organic farming is building up the health of the soil, which serves the entire community, the community of plants, animals, and people. And I've seen it work. I know that it works, and I've seen the kind of health that it can impart to those who take part in it. And it starts right from literally the soil up, the ground up. And it's an entirely different way of healing than the system that we have that simply doesn't work.
Doesn't work, why?
Because we've depleted our soils in this country and worldwide. We've allowed corporations to take control of the spread of seeds and of patenting seeds that people have been saving in small villages all over the world. This is not a sustainable system. The breadbasket of our country, which had one of the richest soils anywhere in the world, has been totally depleted by years and years of a type of farming which did not give back to the soil. And ultimately, sustainable agriculture and organic farming gives back to the soil.
Are you encouraged or discouraged at this point? I mean, for many years, organic farming was, a small, I'm talking about in the United States in the last 5-6 decades. Organic farming was just a small fraction of total agriculture.
Right.
How does it look now as the 21st century begins to you? Promising or not?
Well, I would have to say promising. I wouldn't still be doing it if I didn't feel like it was. I still, the key is that there is so little research dollars. The amount of input that is going into sustainable agriculture is still a tiny fraction. More people are opening their eyes and opening their ears, but of course it's the beginning of that. It should not be, but that's the point that we're at. And I just have to say that I'm encouraged because there are all kinds of links that are happening between the grassroots organizations, Sustainable Agriculture, Organic Agriculture, and some of the land grant universities who are beginning to do studies and are beginning to bring in people who have their eyes open to this sort of agriculture. So I'm encouraged. At the same time, I'm a little bit frightened by the amount of control that corporate agriculture has gathered, and we have to just keep educating.
This is one of the greenhouses at Quail Hill Farm where the season is truly extended.
Yes, we plant seeds in the greenhouse, late September, early October, which are just starting. They've just germinated, and they get watered every other day, and they will grow into lettuce size and large oriental greens, and people will come and harvest them over the whole winter in an unheated greenhouse, actually.
An unheated greenhouse in the state of New York.
In the state of New York, an unheated greenhouse. Only 1 year, when it went down to -8, did we actually lose the crops, but that's pretty rare here on Long Island. So basically they slow down as long as the roots don't freeze. They come back in February when the days start getting longer, and people harvest all winter long.
And looking around the greenhouse as it was out on the farm itself, I don't see a weed. I mean, what does this say about the argument that you need herbicide to farm in any kind of major way?
Well, you have to be good with a hoe is what you really have to be. It does take a little more work, but obviously it can be done. And we do a lot with, in the field, of course, we use cultivating tractors. And there are proven techniques and all sorts of ways that you can get along without using chemicals that are much more sustainable.
In terms of the money it takes to farm organic produce and the money it takes to farm conventionally, what's the calculus? What's the bottom line?
Well, the labor costs are usually higher in organic agriculture because you have to have more people with hoes in their hand, etc. But if you're thinking about any kind of sustainability, we're not buying in fertilizers. We're using compost, for instance. We're not, in the long term, we're building up the health of the soil through all these methods like planting green manures and using compost and alternating crops and all that sort of thing. And in the long run, we're spending less money doing that.
Particularly with the price of oil spiking. I mean, synthetic fertilizer is based on petroleum.
Yeah, yes, it is, and ultimately, it does destroy the life in the soil, and I saw that when I first came here. Although there were certainly people who had been carefully farming this land, the use of the fertilizers had actually destroyed the life structure of the soil, and it takes some years, but you can rebuild that by using compost, etc.
And where do you get, I mean, this isn't an age where there's a lot of horses to get compost from.
Well, luckily there are. Right down the road there's a horse stable, and you can usually, if you look around, you can find a stable somewhere nearby, or find some sort of source of animal manure. You can use all different kinds of animal manures. That's only the basis of it, because after that comes all the green stuff that you add to the compost. So
fertilizer is, in fact, I mean, for centuries it was this way, a renewable and a highly available commodity.
That's right, and it still is. It just takes it depends on how you're looking at it. If you look at it from the view of creating the source of nutrition that you want to put into the soil, you can create it. You can find a way to create it. It's just much simpler in some people's eyes to go buy it in a shop, but in fact there are many other ways to do it. Spring has a different purpose. We have benches up.
Yeah.
We erect benches, and we grow the transplants in trays, right? And then we put leaves. We put like a whole 6 inches of leaves down to keep the weeds down, because when you're watering, of course, they're going to grow all summer. And then we take the transplants out in the field, plant them out in the field, then we take the benches off. No, the next step is we bring in the onions and the garlic, and we lay those out to dry. We put on the fans, and we put shade cloth over this to keep out some of the sun's rays. And then we dry those, and then we take the benches up, and then we recompost and plant directly. So I mean, look at the size of them. And
it's wonderful.
The reason we're going to plant this is the next planting of greens will go in here. But sweet potatoes have to cure at like 80 to 90 degrees. They're an entirely different plant than a potato. And you know, when the sun comes out, it gets to be 100 in here. So you have to cure them for like 2 weeks if you want them to store. Otherwise, they actually will rot. But if you do this, they'll keep for like 4 or 5 months, something like that. This is like a tiny portion of. We still have like, I bet there's 10 times that out in the field.
Wonderful.
It's beautiful.
Wonderful.
Big giant.
Oh, I can't. It's wonderful.
They're called Beauregard, this particular variety.
Ralph, organic farming, you see it as a real practical alternative to commercial non-organic farming?
Well, I think in the long term it's the only alternative to the current kind of farming that we're doing now, because the if you take a look at every aspect of it, the energy used in modern farming is just not going to hold up in the long term. And it's a petroleum-based system. We're running out of oil. The chemicals are unhealthy. The waste of soil, for example, every bushel of topsoil, every bushel of corn that's grown, 2 bushels of topsoil go down the rivers. The whole system is unviable. So organics is really probably the only way to go. I can't think of anything else that would solve the problem of food supply.
How do we get from here to there? I mean, there's these huge corporations that are involved in the chemical farming situation we have today, agribusiness and so forth. Would they, do you think, at any point welcome organic farming?
Well, I think they'll welcome anything where they can make money. I think that's what they're all about. So certainly there are an awful lot of people making money in organics. I think it's growing by 20% a year and has been for quite a long time now. Will continue to grow. I don't really think the corporations have a problem with organics. Apparently some of the very largest organic corporations in America that produce lettuce and greens and tomatoes and some of the other things, particularly in California, have gotten to the point where they're doing it. They'll have two farms right next to each other. Each one will be a couple of thousand acres. One will be grown with chemicals and petroleum, and the other one is grown organically. So, you know, they don't have a problem with it. I think they're going to do whatever the market demands.
Now, for decades, you've taught alternative agriculture at Long Island University. We can't do a class here of 13 weeks, several hours a week. But in a nutshell, could you tell us what you impart to the students in your alternative agriculture class?
Well, what I try to do is give them the big picture. I think it's important. I talk about food, what's in the food. I talk about the pesticides, about the concept of health in food, about the whole idea of an ecological diet, one that's lighter on the planet, and so on. And I try to explain to them how it would be a healthier thing for them to do and a wiser thing for them to do if they would think about buying organic food, or possibly. I never try to convince them to do anything in terms of, you know, growing their own food or anything like that. But one point I'll make, which sort of conveys my whole attitude, is that I say to them, look, you can go into the supermarket, you have two apples there. One's an organic apple and one is a chemical apple. I said, they're not the same product. You know, the organic apple might cost $1 and the other one costs 75 cents, and you think, well, I'm going to get an apple for 25 cents less if I get the chemical apple. But the point is, they really are a very different thing. You buy the organic apple, you say to the farmer, this is what I want you to do. So the farmers convert over when you do that organic apple. When you buy that organic apple, you ensure that people aren't going to be putting chemicals into the water, into the soil, into the air, into their bodies. So it's kind of like a statement. It's very zen in some ways. You're just basically saying, I can't change the whole world overnight, but I can change my world overnight. And the consequence for that for everybody else is quite significant.
In terms of the big argument by the agricultural chemical industry, that it's more efficient to farm with chemicals, synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, and so forth, have created a revolution in agriculture. What's your response to all that?
Well, actually, that particular issue is almost, it's beyond arguing at this point, because all the data, all the statistics will show that probably the least efficient form of farming we can do is current agriculture. It's extremely energy inefficient, resource inefficient. It's not efficient in any way. The productivity from bio-intensive farms, from organic farms, from permaculture type farms and so forth, there's a variety of techniques you can use. Many, many times higher productivity on less land, using less water, using less fertilizer. There's absolutely no argument. This whole thing about big being better and so on, that's just a myth that agriculture is used to put small farmers out of business, to convince people that little farms shouldn't be there. And in the process, they've destroyed communities and destroyed the landscape. If you ask those people to argue it, they'll never, ever be able to provide any solid evidence for it. But there's tons of evidence that shows that the efficiency in agriculture comes from small scale, little plots, little farms, smaller farms, using organic techniques.
Now, at the end of the line, people have to buy their food. You can go and you can buy organic produce from a farm stand or a health food store, or you can go to one of the big chains that are begun to sell organic food. Do you think that's a good development, the big chains, the big supermarkets selling organic food?
Well, you know, I mean, it fits in with our society. Our society is really, at this point in time, is about big and standardization and so forth. And in a way, it's, you know, I wouldn't say it's bad. I think it's good. I think ultimately what's going to happen is that the community is going to have to start producing its own food. It costs too much money to lug that stuff all around the place.
Organic farming backward into the future for sustainable, healthier agriculture. This has been a special report on WVVH-TV. I'm Karl Grossman. Thank you for watching.